Good day, folks. Welcome to ManageEngine's free training on OpUtils. I'm glad you could all join us today. And we'll be starting our day with an introduction to OpUtils, where we'll see what OpUtils is, how OpUtils can help your network, and what are the prerequisites if you want to deploy OpUtils in your network. And then we'll be looking in detail the various capabilities of OpUtils, such as the IP address manager, switchboard mapper, rogue device detector, the networking tools, scheduling, notification, and the various reports available with OpUtils. So let's start with our introduction to OpUtils. So what is OpUtils? Well, being a network admin is not an easy task. With networks becoming increasingly dynamic and adopting to several advanced networking concepts like buyout policies and cloud computing, it is important that we have a reliable network monitoring solution in place that can help us monitor the basic building blocks of a networking, such as your IP addresses, switchboards, DHCP servers, and more. But if we are using a homegrown solution, say a spreadsheet, to manage and monitor these resources, we might end up having to deal with a bunch of manual tasks, periodic manual updates, and these might often result in human error, which may cause a costly network error. So, in order to make this whole process of discovering, monitoring, managing, troubleshooting, and securing your IT resources, ManageEngine offers you OpUtils. So OpUtils is a IP address and switchboard management software that is geared towards helping engineers efficiently monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot their IT resources. So OpUtils is a tightly integrated product. The IP address manager and switchboard mapper together gives you various other capabilities like the rogue detection, which which helps you secure your network from rogue intrusion. It also comprises a set of more than 30 built-in networking tools that helps you keep a check on your bandwidth usage, monitor the availability of your critical devices, backup Cisco configuration files, and more. And we'll be seeing into each of these capabilities in our free training today. So now that we know what OpUtils is, what are the prerequisites if you want to deploy OpUtils in your network? Well, OpUtils can run on your physical or your virtual server, and it comes built in with a PostgreSQL, that is a PGSQL. But you can also configure OpUtils to run with the Microsoft SQL database. And OpUtils requires a 40 GB hard disk, a 8 GB RAM, and as of now, it can run both in your Windows and Linux platforms. So if you want to know more about the software and hardware requirements of OpUtils, please check out the link given at the bottom of the presentation. So this is just a basic intro into OpUtils and its prerequisites. Now let's look into detail the various capabilities of OpUtils, starting from the IP address manager. So what is an IP address manager and why do you need it? Well, with our networks, we deal with hundreds or even thousands of IP addresses on a day-to-day basis. And needless to say, on enterprise-level networks, they span across multiple subnets, including a number of DHCP servers. And if we choose to manage these IP addresses with our conventional spreadsheets, it makes the task a bit more difficult, and it makes a lot of issues that are inevitable when we have a bunch of manual tasks to be done. Say you want to know the real-time status of your IP address space to check if the IP is available or if the IP is being used, if you want to check whether the IP is reserved, or even if you want to reserve an IP addresses, using solutions like spreadsheet require you to update every time there is a state change with your IP, or every time you add a new subnet to your network, and every time you want to reserve a bunch of IP addresses for business critical devices. Well, this sheer amount of manual tasks can easily open up our networks to various network issues like IP exhaustion or subnet overutilization. To avoid all these hurdles, ManageEngine offers you an advanced IP address management module within OpUtils, which helps you to conduct real-time IP scannings, end-to-end IP and MAC address mapping. You can also conduct various other feature capabilities with IP Address Manager. To start managing your IP addresses, you can discover all the IPs and subnets to be scanned through an individual subnet scan, or through a CSV file import, or through a DHCP server scan. And once you have discovered all your IPv4 and IPv6 subnets, you can start monitoring them with OpUtils. So OpUtils IP Address Manager allows you to monitor the status of your IP addresses, identify the connected devices, create your own group or tree view of the managed IPs and subnets, enable DNS and MAC detail visibility, maintain a history of the IP addresses, and you can also automate periodic scans of the IP addresses and also manually trigger IP address scans in your network. So let me take you to the product and let's see in detail how the IP address management capability could help you. So now we are inside the OpUtils console, and as you can see, I have added a number of subnets to my web console, and OpUtils gives me a complete overview with just a tab or a click of the mouse. So if you want to add more subnets or IP addresses, you can do them with 3 simple steps. So you can add the subnet or have a bulk CSV file import. Say you have a bunch of IP addresses and the details in a CSV file. You can simply import them with a click and OpUtils starts monitoring them. You can also have a DHCP server in your network, and you can discover the associated subnets through OpUtils. So once you start adding and discovering the IPs and subnets to a network, OpUtils allows you to group them. So say you have a number of subnets assigned to your development team, a number of subnets to your quality assurance team, and a number of subnets to a general purpose or an administrative team. So if you want to monitor these subnets separately, you can simply group them with OpUtils. So I have a default group where I put in all the different IP addresses. And I have a group called ManageEngine where I have the subnets belonging to different teams. So having a group or a tree view, it gives you an easier way to access and know the availability of your IP subnets. And once you've grouped them, you can also have a donut view with OpUtils that segregates and shows to you the various IP addresses based on the different aspects of the IP addresses in your network. So let's move on back to our tree view where I can see the subnet details. So if I want to scan a particular subnet, I can just select the subnet, click on scan, and as you can see, OpUtils scans them in real time, and it displays to me the available used or transient IP addresses with that subnet. Now, if I want to view individual IPs in particular, I can do that with the IP details tab. So once I click on the IP details tab, OpUtils gives me a list of all the IP addresses, their associated MAC addresses, and it also tells me the forward and reverse lookup status of the IP addresses. So as you can see, we have 3 states that OpUtils describes for the IP addresses. So it can be available, used, or transient. When we say the IP is available, we mean that the IP has not been configured to any other network device, and you can simply assign it to any network device of your choice. And when we say an IP is used, we simply mean that the IP is already being used and we cannot use it for any new network device. OpUtils also displays to you another status, which is the transient status given to an IP address. When we say an IP is transient, it means that the IP is in a buffer state between being used and available. So you can choose to assign that IP to the Mac that was already using it, or assign the IP to a new device. So this is just some of the functionalities you can do with OpUtils. And you can also perform various other actions, like you can mark a particular IP as reserved. Say you have 10 new business critical devices that you're planning to add to a network, and you want to reserve a bunch of IPs. You can simply do that by selecting the IPs and clicking on reserve, and OpUtils marks their status as reserved IP addresses. And if any of these IPs have been dynamically assigned to some other device, OpUtils also generates an alert saying, hey, this is a reserved IP. So this gives you a visibility into how your IPs are being used and how they're assigned. And along with the given different aspects that OpUtils monitors, if you want to add a custom column to keep track of all the IPs, you can do that as well by clicking on the Add Custom Column option. So I have added 2 custom columns to my IP address console, IP address manager console, where I'm monitoring or having comments about the various aspects of the IPs. So you can do that as well. Now, if you have started monitoring IP addresses for a long time and you want to know how these IPs are being assigned, or if you want to know the trend of the IP usage, you can simply do that with the various reports that are available. And along with that, OpUtils also gives you the IP history tab, where it logs the historical IP address details, such as when an IP was used, by which MAC it was used, and the last scan time. OpUtils also monitors your IPs and generates various alerts, such as if an IP's forward lookup has failed or if a reverse lookup has failed, and so on. It also gives you the alert time, the alert generated time, and more. We'll be looking into detail the various alerts that OpUtils provides later in the free training. So this is just a gist of the IP address manager module within OpUtils. If you want to know more, please get in touch with our tech experts through the chat panel, and they might help you schedule a free training at your convenient time. Moving on to the next feature, we have our DHCP server monitor. As we well know, our networks are becoming increasingly dependent on the DHCP servers to dynamically assign the IP addresses. So with OpUtils, you can monitor and manage your DHCP server scopes and their associated subnets. OpUtils allows you to monitor your Windows, Cisco, Palo Alto, Linux, and Fortinet DHCP servers. You can schedule DHCP scans with OpUtils, and you can also get all the details from the DHCP server for in-depth network usage and scope information. So let me take you to the console and let's see how it works. So in my console, I have added one DHCP server that I want to monitor. So when I click on that, I get a summary of the various aspects of the DHCP server, such as the server name, type, total IPs available, number of IPs leased, and so on. And when clicking on scope details, OpUtils gives you visibility into the various scopes associated with the DHCP server. As you can see, I have a number of scopes. I can see the total IPs, the IPs that are leased, and I can also reserve IPs, and I can see which IPs are reserved. Clicking on the scope range gives you the details of the scope range, the excluded range, and so on. You can simply export these details for future reference, or you can also view the particular IPs associated with the DHCP server by clicking on the IP address tab. Since OpUtils IP address manager tightly integrates with the DHCP server monitoring, you can work in tandem with the availability of your IP addresses in the DHCP server and the IPs monitored by the IP address manager. So this skips the legwork of having to have different tools or different tabs to monitor your IP addresses and DHCP server. So you can simply do them together as one with the OpUtils IP address manager module. Moving on to the next capability, OpUtils offers you a switchboard mapper. Switches, being the enablers of communication in our network, It is important that we monitor how the switches are connected, to what ports are the switches connected, what is the nature of the port, the status of the port, the connected device, and so many details. Well, why do we have to do that? Because only if we do that, we get a complete visibility into how our network is communicating. But with racks and racks of switch ports to monitor, it becomes impractical if we have to go there manually and check each and every port cable. So Opules saves this entire legwork by giving you an advanced switch port mapper that carries out port scanning in your network regularly and maps all the switches to the ports. So once you can map all the switches to the ports, you can also view various aspects of the connected ports, like if the port has multiple MACs connected to it, what is a MAC connected to a port, what is the IPs connected in the port, and if there is any virtual IP in your switchport network. So Opules switchport mapper allows you to discover your switch ports through an individual switch. So you can simply add the switch address and Opules starts monitoring it. Or you can add switches in bulk through the CSV file import or through the network discovery, where you can specify the range of the IPs within which your switches lay, and Opules simply scans your network and discovers the switch ports. Once you've added the switch ports, Opules offers you various functionalities like the port availability management, the port view of the switch, the connected MAC and VLAN details, and the group and tree view of the ports. And you can also administratively enable or disable switches or the ports. And OpUtils gives you a port status history, which shows you how the ports have been used throughout the period of time. So it historically logs the port operation and it displays to you as well. So let me take you to the product and let's see how the switchport mapper module works. So clicking on the switchport mapper module, you can see I have added 3 switches that I'm monitoring through my web console. So you can also add more switches or ports with the 3 steps, such as by adding them manually or by importing them through a CSV file or by network discovery, where we, as discussed, we put in the starting IP and the ending IP of the IP addresses. And once the SNMP credentials are configured, OpUtils automatically scans the network range and adds the switches. Just like how we have with our IP address manager module, OpUtils also gives you an option to group your network switches based on the similar aspects. So I have grouped all my 3 network switches under the default group, but you can create as many groups as you want. So once you have started monitoring the switches, I can see that OpUtils has given me a summary of all the switches that it's monitoring. So when I click on one of the switches, I can see the ports associated with the switches in detail. So as you can see, there are a number of ports, and OpUtils also shows me if a port has multiple connected MAC addresses and their IP addresses, and I can also see various other aspects like if the port is stacked or if there is a device with a virtual IP. And OpUtils also gives me the status of the port. It tells me whether the port is up or down, or whether it's available or used. And it also gives me a columns of various other aspects, like I can see the VLAN ID, the VLAN name, the admin status, and as you can see, it also gives me a summary of individual ports when you click on them. Now that we have seen how OpUtils shows the aspects of all the ports that are connected with the switch ports, you can also have a port view option where OpUtils shows you how your switch ports are and what are the ports that are connected to it. So for instance, in my switch port 192.168.50.132, I have these many ports that are connected and running. So hovering over them gives me details of that port, like what is the interface index, what is the interface name, the status, MAC address, and the IP address of the port. OpUtils also logs the historical port operations under the port history option. It also generates various alerts in case your port has run into any emerging issues. Like I can see if a new device is added to a port, or if a switch is down, or if the port status has changed to used, and if there is no response to SNMP queries, and more. So we'll be looking in detail how to configure these alerts in later parts of the training. Moving on to the next capability that Opules offers is the rogue detection. One of the common issues network admins face on managing and securing the network is the unauthorized access of rogue agents or rogue devices. Let's just say that I have a bunch of 50 devices or 50 IP addresses that I'm reserving for a bunch of 50 new devices that might connect with my network. And in this scenario, if another amount of unauthorized devices start accessing my network, then I might run out of IP addresses to assign to the newly coming devices. So in order to avoid this unauthorized access and network resource usage, OpUtils gives you a feature called the Rogue Device Detector. With rogue device detection, you can detect the unauthorized access of network resources and protect your network from intrusion. OpUtils starts scanning your network. So once you have added your IP addresses, the subnets, and the switches and the servers, OpUtils scans your network regularly and it lists to you if any new device is connected to your network. So it gives you a list of all the discovered devices, and from which you can choose whether the device is authorized or if the device shouldn't be allowed to access your network. So what are the features of the OpUtils Rogue Device Detection module? Well, you can detect unauthorized access of your network resources. You can authorize new devices into your network. You can mark the device status as per your requirement. You can also block rogue devices and prevent network intrusion. You can identify ARP spoofing, and in case you want to add a bunch of new devices into your network, you can simply add them through the network discovery option or through the Active Directory or as a bulk import through the CSV files. And OpUtils allows you to scan your network periodically to monitor your network health anytime. So let me take you to the product and let's see hands-on how the rogue device detection module works. So clicking on rogue device detection, OpUtils gives me a list of all the rogue devices that have been identified. So initially, these devices are shown as newly discovered devices. So you can see I have 130 newly discovered devices in my network, and I can choose to mark them as their authorization. Say I want to mark these two devices as trusted. So I know these devices and I'm okay if they access my network. I can simply select the devices and mark as trusted. So once I mark them, OpUtils adds these devices to the trusted devices list. So these are authorized devices that can access my network anytime they want. Now, among the other devices, let's just say these three devices are guest devices. Let's say they are user brought in devices, and I can give them access for a particular period of time, say for a week, and after which I want to reconsider if I can mark them as trusted or if I cannot give them access. So I'll simply mark these devices as rogue. So once you mark these devices as rogue, OpUtils gives you an option where it marks these devices as rogue, and once the validity period expires, OpUtils says, hey, the validity period for these devices has expired. So you can choose to mark them as trusted or as guest. And for the next set of devices, say the next three devices, I do not want them to access my network. So if they are switches, I can simply select them and block or unblock the switch ports. Or I can mark them as rogue, and once I do that, OpUtils filters out these devices and displays them under rogue. So with these three options, that is the trusted, guest, and rogue, you can choose to mark the authentication of the devices based on their trust levels. So this helps you keep unauthorized access and network intrusion at bay with the rogue detection module. Moving on to the next feature, we have our networking tools. So OpUtils gives you more than 30 plus networking tools completely free of cost that helps you carry out your day-to-day networking processes and operations with ease. So it helps you diagnose your network and conduct network reconnaissance and troubleshoot your network issues with ease. So starting with our first networking tool, which is the bandwidth monitor, OpUtils helps you to analyze the bandwidth consumption of your network. So you can see who's consuming your bandwidth and how much bandwidth is being consumed. You can also have the config file manager, where it helps you manage the startup and running configurations of Cisco devices. We have the network monitor, through which you can monitor the availability of your network devices. So let's see in detail about these three tools, starting with the bandwidth monitor. So with OpUtils bandwidth monitor, you can monitor the real-time traffic utilization over an interface. So you can see what is the interface speed, what is the in-traffic, out-traffic, the utilization, and so on. It also helps you configure thresholds for maximum utilization. So once these threshold is crossed, OpUtils tells you or raises you an alarm saying, hey, this device is consuming more bandwidth than your threshold. Also, you can create utilization graphs with in and out traffic that OpUtils automatically generates and displays to you in the web console. So let's have a look at the bandwidth monitoring tool from the web console. So as you can see, I have a number of interfaces that I've added to OpUtils, and they're running. Now, if you want to add more interfaces, you can simply do that by clicking on Discover Interface, specify the interface address, specify the SNMP credential for that interface, and you can start monitoring that interface. So once you've added interfaces to be monitored, OpUtils gives you an insight into the various aspects of the interface, such as the interface status, the interface speed, and so on. So clicking on one of the interfaces, I can view in detail how the interface has performed or how much bandwidth has been consumed. For instance, I can see the in-traffic over last 1 year or 1 month or daily or even the current bandwidth consumption. And I can see the out traffic, I can see the overall traffic consumption, and if the interface has raised any alarms regarding the bandwidth consumption, OpUtils displays that as well under the alarms tab. So as you can see, as of now, I had no alarms with the particular interface we are monitoring right now. So let me take you back to the presentation and let's see in detail about the config file manager. The configuration file manager tool of OpUtils helps you collect the running and startup configuration backups of different Cisco switches. And once you do that, you can maintain and compare configuration backups, and you can also schedule backups for these Cisco switches with the config file manager tool. Let's go to the product and look at the tool in detail. So clicking on config file manager, you can see that I've added 2 switches of whose configuration files I'm continually monitoring. You can simply add any more switches if you want with an add device option, and you can import them in bulk with a CSV file or just add the individual device to OpUtils. So once you've added the devices, you can check out the startup and the running configuration files of the device. Well, if you want to compare the startup and running configuration files between 2 devices, you can simply do that with the compare option. So I'm comparing the startup configuration files between my different switches. And I can just select the configuration type, the backup of the configuration file, and OpUtils automatically gives me a comparison between the 2 configuration files. So it shows me the added configurations, the modified configurations, and the deleted configurations. So this helps us create a baseline of how the configurations are processed over time and what are the different changes that are happening between the configuration of the different Cisco switches in your network. So moving on to the next tool, we have our network monitor, which helps us to have a real-time availability check on the various network tools, the devices. So you can set up thresholds for response time and missed polls. Say I'm setting up a 3 seconds threshold for the response from different network devices. So once I set that up, Opules scans the network devices, and if any of these thresholds are late with the response time, say 3.3 seconds, Opules says, hey, this device might be an issue, so it gives me a warning. But if the device has not responded or if it has missed the polls, Opules tells me that this device is critical. So it allows you to monitor the availability and health of your network devices from a single web console. So let me take you to the product and let's see how this tool works. To start using the network monitor, you'll have to first add all the devices that you want to monitor. You can simply do that with the add device option. And once you've added the devices, you can set up the polling intervals, which can be every 20 seconds, 40 seconds, up to 60 minutes. And once you've set up the polling intervals, Opules automatically scans your network devices and it gives a look into various aspects like the DNS name, the status of the device, the system name of the device, the last updated time of the device, and so on. So clicking on one of these devices, it shows me the healthy or the warning or critical status of the device based on the threshold I have configured. So as you can see there, it has raised a number of alarms saying, hey, my device has a warning because the response time has exceeded 3 seconds, which was the threshold time I have configured. So you can simply monitor how your network devices are responding with the Opules network monitoring tools. So the next tool in our list is Wake on LAN. Wake on LAN has been a very common technology that has been in use ever since. It simplifies the process of having to reach to your devices physically, press the power button, and boot them. So Opules gives you an advanced Wake on LAN tool that helps you ease the use of vault technology in your network. So it supports both manual and scheduled wake up, and it also gives you the ability to scan system across VLANs. Now, with the Wake on LAN tool in Opules, once you've added all the devices that you want to select and wake up or remotely boot, you can simply do them with a click of the button. So once you press click, the device boots up and Opules gives you the status of the device, saying whether the device is up or down, and it also gives you an idea of the MAC address of the device. And say you have a bunch of devices that you want to wake up on a particular time, you can simply do that with the scheduling option Opules provides you. So the Wake on LAN tool simplifies the entire process of the usage of vault technology in your network. And with that, Opules gives you a tool set. So it gives you a bunch of more than 30 plus networking tools completely free of cost. So these tools are easy to access and are completely useful, so they help you to troubleshoot your day-to-day network problems. And it helps you save time in analyzing your network issues. And let's have a look into these tools in the web console. So these are the various tools Opules offers you. So I have a bunch of ping tools, I have a number of address monitoring tools, network monitoring tools, SNMP tools, Cisco tools, and a set of other tools as well. So clicking on any of the tools, it takes you to a simple UI where you'll have to specify just a number of credentials or the addresses or the requirements of the tool, and Opules simplifies the process of carrying out the network diagnosis. So as you can see under the ping tools, I have a number of tools like the proxy ping, which would help me to ping across different network proxies. I have a trace route tool, which would give me the hops and the timeouts in the network. And similarly, I have a WMI query tool, which helps me to remotely trigger WMI queries in my network. Going to the address monitoring tools, Opules gives us a bunch of address resolving capabilities with its tightly integrated IP address manager and the toolset. So since you already have an IP address manager module, you know the different IPs and their aspects that you're monitoring. Now, if you want to go in detail, the various IPs that you're monitoring with the IP address manager, you can simply make use of the address monitoring tool, such as you can resolve a MAC address, you can have a DNS resolver, a Dhcp scope monitor, and say you want to view all the IPs and the associated MACs in your network, you can simply view that using the MAC IP list. So my MAC IP list tool, it gives me a list of all the IPs, their associated MAC address, DNS name, scan status, and so on. And I can export these results for future reference, or I can have these results as a cross-reference with my operations in the IP address manager module. So the next set of tools is our network monitoring tools, where we have different scanners such as the network scanner tool, the port scanner tool, the system explorer, and the TCP reset. So with network scanner tool, I can scan across my network and have various aspects such as the ping status, response time, OS type, and so on. With port scanner tool, I can scan different ports in my network, see whether they're up or down, and look at the various services that are running. And with OpUtils port scanner tool, you can use this tool to analyze whether your ports are running if any unauthorized services. Say your port is running a service that you don't want to run, you can switch back to the switchboard mapper module and block that port administratively. So OpUtils tools work in tandem with the different modules in OpUtils, so it simplifies and brings together the entire process of monitoring your IT resources in just a single web console. So with the System Explorer, you can view the various aspects of the system and you can have a remote TCP reset. And with the System Updates tool, you can remotely update the system details of the different devices in your network. So this is just a look into the network monitoring tools. OpUtils also offers you a bunch of SNMP tools like the MIB browser. So with the MIB browser, you can carry out various SNMP operations. You can have a look into the various SNMP nodes in your network. And with the other SNMP tools like the SNMP graph or SNMP walker, OpUtils gives you an idea of how all the SNMP nodes in your network are performing. With the Cisco tools, OpUtils gives you a couple of tools to monitor and manage the Cisco devices in your network. So I have a device scan tool that can scan the Cisco devices, and I have a device explorer that allows me to explore the various aspects of the Cisco devices in my network. So this is just a brief introduction to the different tools available with OpUtils, and you can check them all out by having a hand-on demo or by scheduling a personalized demo with one of our product experts through the chat panel. Moving on to the next capability, we have the scheduling and notification option with OpUtils. As we've seen throughout the free training, the most time-consuming task when it comes to managing or monitoring your basic network components is the process of scanning them every time you want to know their status. So in order to keep the network device status up to date, OpUtils gives us a scheduling option that automates the process of network scanning. So once you set up a network schedule, you can update IP addresses and switchboard status automatically. You can have a periodical check of your networks and detect if there are any newly connected devices and mention them as rogue if the devices are unauthorized. You can also scan your routers for the MAC IP relation, and all these schedules can be configured at user convenience. So let's just see how to set up a schedule with OpUtils. So clicking on settings, I have an option called scheduler where I can set up schedules for different modules in OpUtils. So for instance, I want to set up a schedule for my IP addresses. Simply by clicking on the Add Task option, I can give a task name, specify the subnets that I want to scan, and I can configure OpUtils to automatically scan these subnets in minutes or hour or daily, weekly, monthly, or just once. So it's a simple process. All you have to do is give a name for the schedule, select the resources that you want to scan, select the time period by which you want to scan, and once you click save, OpUtil automatically starts scanning these resources at the specified time. So it simplifies the entire process because all you have to do is set up a schedule and OpUtil scans them. So the entire part of manual scanning is removed once you set up a schedule with OpUtils. The next capability is the notification alerts. An important aspect of monitoring our network resources is making sure they are functioning effectively and there are no emerging network issues. OpUtils gives you a set of predefined alerts based on various scenarios. And once you want to enable them, all you have to do is just click a button and these alert scenarios are enabled. And once enabled, these, in case if there is any emerging network issue, these alerts are sent to your email or syslog. So let me take you to the product and show you the different notification options available with OpUtils. So under IP Address Manager, I can configure alerts for various scenarios. Like I can see alerts if a reverse lookup has failed. I can set up an alert if I want to know when a forward lookup returns a different IP and so on. These scenarios are threshold based as well. For instance, for me, I want to get alerted when a subnet IP utilization is lower than 20%. So once I set up the threshold as 20%, OpUtils instantly alerts me saying, hey, your subnet is being underutilized. But you can choose to set these threshold at any required level, say 40 or 30, and once you save and click on enable, the alerts are automatically triggered whenever the threshold is crossed. So for other scenarios, all you have to do is click on enable by email or by syslog. Say you want the alerts to be sent to your syslog, you'll just have to click on enable by the syslog option. And once this is set, OpUtils generates various alerts and it sends to you through the preferred channel. And you can also see these alerts in the web console under the specified modules. So this is a gist of the various alerts that are available with OpUtils. The next capability is the reporting option that is available with OpUtils. So it helps you to keep track of how your IP or switchboard resources are being used, what is using your IP or switchboard resources, and OpUtils also allows you to track and audit the network operations that are done through OpUtils. So you can simply do that with the reports that are available with OpUtils. So you have a predefined wide range of reports for each module. You have a detailed information, and we have an easy scheduling option for the reports. So let me take you to the product and let's have a look at the different reports that are available with OpUtils. As you can see, I have a bunch of reports for the IP address manager and the switchboard mapper. Clicking on any report, it displays to me in the web console the various aspects that are monitored by the reports. So I can choose to download them as a CSV or a PDF file, or I can schedule these reports at any convenient time I want. So once, let's just say I want a report on all the unused IP addresses or reserved static IP addresses and the Dhcp server related reports. I can just select the reports and schedule them. So once I schedule them, these reports will be sent to my email that I have configured. So OpUtils gives you another option to audit the different operations that you have done with OpUtils. For instance, as you can see, I have one of my admins have modified using the rogue detection module, and you can filter out these reports based on the tools that you want to filter them and based on the users. And with that, we've covered the reporting option that is available with OpUtils. Now, all these features that we have discussed this far in the free training, starting from our IP address managers to scheduling to the reports, are all completely available in a full-fledged manner in our on-premise deployment. Now, let's just say you want to take a short break or you want to go on a walk and still want to get connected or know what's happening in your OpUtils on-premise deployment. Well, you can use the OpUtils mobile app, which is now available. So this app is available in both iOS and Android platforms, and you can use this app to know what's going on with your OpUtils on-premise deployment. This app seamlessly integrates with your on-premise deployments, and it shows to you or mirrors to you the various data that is available in your web consoles. So if you want to know more about this app, please check out the link that is given at the bottom of the presentation. All right, so now that we have reaching towards the end of our free training, let's just have a summary of all things that we have discussed in our free training. So what do you get out of OpUtils? Well, you can say a big goodbye to all the intense manual efforts that come with homegrown solutions like spreadsheets. You can start easily and efficiently monitor and have a better real-time view of your IP address management. OpUtils gives you advanced IP scanning, IP address tracking, IP monitoring, IP-specific reports, and alarms and alerts to detect any issues with your IP addresses. You can monitor both your IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, along with the DHCP servers and multiple subnets. Then you can manage ports in real time with the Switchboard Mapper module. OpUtils Switchboard Mapper gives you end-to-end switchboard mapping, real-time port scanning, and it gives you details into various aspects of your ports, like the connected MAC details, if the port is connected to a virtual IP, and so on. You can also secure your network from rogue devices or from intrusion with the rogue device detection module that is available with OpUtils. So this module scans your entire network and it displays to you any newly connected network device, and you can choose to give them access to access your network or simply block them with OpUtils. And then we saw how OpUtils helps you schedule scans to save the manual efforts. So all you have to do is set up a schedule with OpUtils, and you can forget about scanning, because once you set up a schedule, OpUtils automatically scans your network on the periodic intervals that you have configured. And then OpUtils gives you a bunch of 30 plus networking tools completely free of cost, and which you can use to monitor the bandwidth, the availability of your network device, maintain backups, diagnose your network with network monitoring tools, carry out various SNMP-based activities with SNMP tools, and so on. OpUtils also gives you instant notification over email. So after using all these modules and after scanning them, in case if anything goes wrong or if there is an emerging network issue, OpUtils instantly notifies that issue to you through the email or the syslog option. And finally, we saw the various reports and the audits that OpUtils holds up as, which you can use as an historic reference in case you want to analyze how your network resources are being used and who's using them. So this is a gist of everything that you can get with OpUtils. So one of the major advantages is you can say a big goodbye to all the manual efforts, and OpUtils helps you to simplify the process of seamlessly scanning, monitoring, and troubleshooting your network resources. Now that you have seen a gist of how OpUtils works, if you want to know in detail how OpUtils can seamlessly integrate with your network and how you can use OpUtils for your network needs, please feel free to set up a personalized free demo with one of our product experts who can help you figure out how OpUtils can help your network. So just set up a free demo with our product experts through the options available. Now that we have reached the end of our free training, let's have a look into some of the interesting questions that we've had through the training. Starting with question number 1, does OpUtils provide a report that has combination of both IP addresses, manager, and a switchboard mapper's data? Yes, OpUtils does provide you a report where you can correlate the data from your IP address manager and switchboard mapper module. So under switchboard mapper, we have the connected IP details, where OpUtils gives you all the data from your IP address manager correlating with the associated switchboard in your network. So the connected IP details would be the answer if you want to have both IP address manager and switchboard mappers data in a report. The next question is, what are the supported DHCP servers? With OpUtils, you can, as I've said before, we can start monitoring DHCP servers in tandem with the IP address manager. So when you add a DHCP server, OpUtils gives you options to add your Microsoft DHCP server or a Palo Alto firewall, Linux server, Cisco router, or your Fortinet firewall DHCP server. So this is the different DHCP servers that OpUtils supports as of now. The next question is, where can I add my DNS server in OpUtils? To add your DNS server in OpUtils, you'll have to go to settings and under IP address manager, click on general, and in that you'll have to specify the DHCP server name that you want to add to OpUtils, and clicking on save, you would have added your DHCP DNS server to OpUtils. The next question is, how to retrieve MAC address connected to an IP address information. Well, OpUtils retrieves the MAC address from the ARP, that is the Address Resolution Protocol table that is available in your routers. Where will my config file backups be stored within server, and can I change that location? Your configuration file backups will be stored within the TFTP folder that is available within your OpUtils home folder in your device. And yes, you can change the location by going to settings in OpUtils and clicking on the path for the TFTP server file. The next question is, what is the polling interval for network monitor? OpUtils gives you a choice between a number of polling intervals that you can set up for your network monitor, starting from 20 seconds to 40 to a minute and ranging till 60 minutes. So once you set up these, any of these polling intervals, OpUtils starts to automatically poll and update the poll results in your console. How does OpUtils push configuration changes such as blocking ports to my switch? Well, OpUtils pushes these changes through the SNMP write credential. So if you want to administratively block ports in your switches through OpUtils, you'll have to first ensure that the SNMP credential you have configured has full-fledged read and write capability. The next question is, can I monitor IP conflicts? Yes, you can monitor IP conflicts with OpUtils. As we've seen in the training before, OpUtils has a bunch of predefined scenarios that might indicate an emerging network issues. So under IP address manager and in the configure alerts tab, we have an option called IP address conflict is detected. So once you enable this notification, OpUtils continuously scans all the IPs that are being assigned in a network. And if there is an IP address conflict, It sends you an alert through your email or syslog, whichever you have configured, and you can know that there has been an IP address conflict in your network. And last question is, how is Opules licensed? Does it have a separate license for bandwidth monitor and config file manager? Well, yes. Opules is licensed based on the number of managed IPs and switchboards that you're using in your network. Unused IPs or switchboards are not taken into account of the managed IPs. So it's a pretty simple license model. And so the next part of the question is, does it have a separate license for bandwidth monitor and config file manager? No, Opules does not have a separate license. These tools are a part of the free network tools that comes inbuilt with Opules. So these are the few questions that we've had throughout the training. Now, if you want to learn more about Opules, you can check out our YouTube channel, which is the Op Manager Tech Videos channel. Or if you have any questions that you want to know, you can check out our forums. And if you want to know in detail about the various technical help documents about Opules, you can go to help.oputils.com. And if you want to reach out to our product team, you can do that through OpUtils support at ManageEngine.com. And we have a couple of toll-free numbers if you want to get in touch with us. And that brings us to the end of our free training today. Glad that you can make it, and I hope you've learned about how you can seamlessly scan, monitor, and troubleshoot your network resources with OpUtils. Thank you.